On February 3, 2025, in the town of Chernyakovsk, Kaliningrad region, Russia, one of the largest search operations in recent memory unfolded. Thousands of people took to the streets to help search for 7-year-old Danil Trekhlebov. According to his mother and stepfather, the boy had run away from home the day before after a small argument and a failed joke about him being sent to an orphanage. Unable to find him on their own, the adults contacted the police and later reached out to volunteers. From early morning, local residents searched every backyard, basement, attic, and empty lot. People were ready to keep looking deep into the night, not yet knowing the horrifying truth behind Daniel's disappearance. Danil and his 12-year-old sister Irina were being raised in what looked from the outside like a normal, even stable family. After separating from the children's biological father, their mother, 30-year-old Anastasia, quickly moved on. Even before the divorce, she had several relationships, and soon after she got involved with 42-year-old Sergei Gamma, who became the kid's stepfather. She took his last name after they got married. Meanwhile, the children's biological father, a sailor, remained a part of their lives. Though often away at sea for long stretches, he would always make time to see his kids whenever he returned. He wanted to raise them himself, but first needed to save up for an apartment of his own. So for the time being, Danil and Irina stayed with their mother and stepfather. On the surface, things seemed normal. Anastasia ran the household and recently worked part-time at an online order pickup point. Sergei worked as a long-haul truck driver. The apartment was neat, the kids were fed, clothed, and taken care of. But neighbors occasionally overheard shouting, Anastasia arguing with her son or her husband. Sometimes they'd hear the children crying. There were even reports of the adults physically fighting in the stairwell. In May 2024, the neighbors called the police during one such loud argument. Still, not everyone agreed with this picture. Another woman living on the same floor insisted she never heard any fights during the 3 years they lived there.
They seemed like a good young family. If there were arguments or abuse, it would have been obvious. I never once saw Anastasia or the kids crying. If Sergei was such a bad husband, she would have taken the children and left long ago.
She even recalled how Sergei fixed her washing machine once. She had visited their apartment too. It was always tidy and clean. But those statements crumble in the face of what came from Danil's kindergarten and later his school. In March 2024, kindergarten staff noticed bruises all over Danil's legs, from his heels to his thighs, and a torn ear. When asked what had happened, the boy said Sergei had beaten him. The teacher and school psychologist immediately reported it to their supervisor, who called the police. Shortly after, Child Protective Services visited the home, but somehow concluded everything was fine. One of the kindergarten workers later said,
"How were they not placed under observation after that? It shouldn't have mattered whether the mother filed a police report. The boy said himself that his mom didn't protect him while his stepfather was beating him, but CPS sent back a statement saying the children were fed, clothed, and the home was clean. That was it. They just washed their hands of it."
Anastasia even threatened the staff, claiming it was her parenting method. The formal response from the police never came. In September 2024, Danil started first grade at Gymnasium No. 2, where his sister Irina had been studying for years. By December, his teacher noticed more bruises. Irina also showed signs of injury. School administrators contacted juvenile services, suspecting domestic abuse. Anastasia was called in for a meeting, where she explained the bruises by saying the siblings often fought with each other. Authorities took her word for it. No action was taken by police or CPS. Danil stopped attending school altogether after December 13th. His mother told teachers he was sick, a story she stuck with even after the new year. A month later, she took Irina to the district hospital, where the girl complained of pain near her collarbone. An X-ray revealed a fracture, and she was transferred to a regional children's hospital for surgery. While the girl was in the hospital, the boy spent the next few days at home. Anastasia's co-workers said she monitored Danil through a home surveillance camera during her shifts, and often complained that something was wrong with him. According to her, the boy had become hysterical, wouldn't let her sleep, and had started throwing himself headfirst at the bed frame, causing himself to bleed. She spoke harshly about her son, and was heard being verbally abusive to him on the phone. On February 1st, Anastasia suddenly quit her job, citing family problems. She had only worked there for a month and a half. According to Danil's mother and stepfather, on the evening of February 2nd, he once again wouldn't listen to them. This led to another argument and a careless phrase thrown into the air. "If you don't stop, we'll send you to an orphanage." Sometime around 9 p.m., Danil seized a moment, got dressed, grabbed 8,000 rubles, and ran away. His phone, however, remained at home. A friend of the family later recalled,
"Last night, Sergei came over to see my husband. He looked pale, panicked. He said, 'Danil's gone.' He took the money and ran off, and we can't find him anywhere."
The official missing persons report for 7-year-old Danil Trekhlebov was filed the next morning, on February 3rd. The entire police force of Chernyakovsk was mobilized. K-9 units from the Kaliningrad region and volunteer groups joined the search. A Telegram channel was launched to coordinate the efforts, and within just a few hours, nearly 8,000 people had joined. At one point, there was a lead. A child was spotted on CCTV near the local bread factory at 8:55 p.m., not far from where Danil lived. Search teams worked that lead for hours, only to find out it wasn't him. More tips came in. Someone thought they'd seen the boy here or there, but every time it led to nothing. Not a single confirmed sighting of Danil came in, not in the city, not beyond it. And yet hope still remained. As night fell, the search didn't stop. People with flashlights were sent to sweep the dark outskirts of town, forming search groups of 10 to 15 each. Others covered residential areas. While the dogs tried to trace Danil's scent from his home, volunteers canvassed nearby neighborhoods and plastered missing posters. Danil's mother and stepfather even joined the search. One of the volunteers remembers,
"His stepfather said he'd help check the rest of the city, but he didn't come with us. He drove off alone. The boy's mother kept wandering from place to place. Eventually, she just went home, in case he came back."
But soon people started to notice something strange. The parents didn't act like people who had lost a child. Sergei was calm, polite, helpful, but distant. He kept to himself, working separately. Anastasia, too, seemed oddly relaxed. She dodged questions. Sometimes she even smiled.
It was hard to get any useful information from her. Where did the boy usually play? Where did his grandma live?
Her friend Anna recalled that evening.
Around 5 or 6, I came over. I'd called her first and told her that the search team was there with dogs and they needed something that smelled like Danil. She just stood there holding a blood pressure monitor and handed me one of his shirts.
According to Anna, Anastasia didn't seem distraught. She kept reading group chats and news updates on her phone, getting annoyed at people speculating that Danil might be dead. Of course, people react to stress in different ways, but the behavior of both parents raised red flags, so the authorities kept a close eye on them. To get more details, the police interviewed Anastasia and Sergei multiple times. A neighbor of the family said,
"They kept changing their story from the start. First, they said Danil just ran away with the money. Then it turned into, Anastasia helped him get dressed, and Sergei was waiting in the car. Maybe Danil got lost in the stairwell. Then suddenly, Sergei said Danil got in the car. They argued. He threatened to take him to an orphanage. The boy grabbed the money, opened the door, and ran off. From a moving car, away from an adult man, into open fields, and he couldn't catch him? Come on."
While this was happening, investigators also questioned staff from Danil's kindergarten and school and spoke to his sister. The picture was becoming clearer, and the suspicions stronger. Then, sometime around 9 p.m., during yet another police interview, Anastasia broke. She finally confessed what had really happened to her son. Close to midnight, a message was posted in the volunteer chat.
"Everyone, go home. The parents just confessed. The boy is gone. Police are now heading to the burial site."
According to Sergei, the conflict with his stepson occurred on February 1st, After Danil, who was still sick, refused to do morning exercises, the stepfather decided to teach him a lesson. At that moment, the boy was lying on the floor in the corner by the wardrobe, apparently another part of Sergei's twisted disciplinary system. Sergei lunged at the first grader and started punching him in the torso and head. When the boy's mother returned from work, she found Danil in a horrifying state. His body was covered in bruises and his face was battered and swollen. But Anastasia didn't call an ambulance or the police. She simply laid her son under a blanket, hoping that he would rest, recover, and that the bruises would go away with time.
She said Danil was sick and had a high fever. Then she claimed he had fallen and hit his head. That was right before he disappeared. Now I understand. It was her partner who killed the boy and she covered it up.
Danil died in agony, right in front of his 12-year-old sister. By then, she had already been discharged from the hospital. Later, it would come to light that when the stepfather was beating Danil, the girl managed to crawl under the bed and record the incident on video. She then hid the phone to keep him from finding it. After Danil's heart stopped, Sergei convinced Anastasia to help him dispose of the body and report the boy as missing. As previously mentioned, on February 1st, Anastasia suddenly quit her job. Around the same time, she stopped by a pharmacy to buy iodine and bandages. When it was too late to save the child, the couple wrapped him in a trash bag, stuffed the body into a sports bag, and placed it in the trunk. At some point during the visit, Sergei stepped outside under the pretense of smoking, took the bag from the car, and dumped it into a nearby swamp after weighing it down with bricks. According to another version, he made a separate trip in the middle of the night to dispose of the body on the outskirts of the city. When the truth came out, someone wrote in a local online group that they'd seen Sergei around 2 a.m. He was walking back from the country house, wearing muddy clothes. It's likely that, at first, Gamma planned to bury the body. On February 3rd, volunteers searching the area discovered an abandoned shovel. It was found near the place where Sergei later dumped the bag.
The most terrifying moment was when we stood in front of her and asked, "Are we looking for a living child or a dead one?" Not a single muscle on her face moved. You can't imagine. This was a mother who knew her son had already been drowned in a swamp, and that we wouldn't find him alive. She didn't give herself away at all.
On February 3rd, around 11:30 p.m., the body was found, and the discovery shocked everyone.
It's on the outskirts of the city. The residential area ends, and then come the garden plots. In between, there's a swampy patch covered in vegetation. A small but fairly deep swamp, about a meter deep, surrounded by bushes, hard to reach. The bundle wasn't visible on the surface. One of the rescuers pulled it out. The police clearly knew exactly where to look. It was actually well hidden, but they found it right away. The body was wrapped in rags, placed in a bag, with bricks inside. Everything was put inside a trash bag, which was tied shut. When they unwrapped it all, it looked like the body had been folded up and tightly packed. The adult male rescuers were in shock.
The forensic examination concluded that Danil died from a closed head injury. Sergei was immediately arrested. There were doubts about the mother's involvement. At first, investigators determined that she hadn't taken part in the murder and treated her as a witness. However, with each passing day, more and more dark family secrets were uncovered, thanks to concerned citizens who were deeply shaken by the case. Over time, it became clear that some of Anastasia's actions had directly led to the tragedy.
Это не так много, чтобы ты встал и сделал то, что тебя попросили. Не хочешь выполнять ничего, валяйся дальше на полу, я тебе говорю, у тебя полчаса, ты замерзнешь и просто помрешь от холода. Вот и все. И сделаешь ты хуже только себе. Я тебе говорю, либо ты ходишь и получаешь и попить, и на день рождения велосипед, либо ты ничего вообще не получаешь. А так как ты лег на пол, ты, говорю, через полчаса замерзнешь и от холода помрешь. И сделаешь хуже только себе, потому что мы будем живые, а ты в земле закопанный. Вот и все.
This surveillance footage from the online store's pickup point where she worked began circulating online. The conversation was recorded on January 31st, the day before the fatal beating. It didn't take much to realize she was well aware that Sergei was beating both her son and her older daughter. But now there was proof that she not only ignored it, she threatened and manipulated the children with the fear of their stepfather.
Не ходил по комнате, я смотрю на камеру. Ну, просто я тебя сейчас предупреждаю, Сережа, все, у него сегодня больше нет работы, он сейчас отвез последний свой рецепт, и сейчас с Калининграда едет домой. У тебя есть час. Я тебе сказала, 30 раз делай. Алина тебе принесет попить. Дальше, если ты можешь, у тебя есть час. Алина, будильник можешь на час поставить? 11:30, ставь где-то примерно так. Ну, до 12 он приедет. Вот как будильник проиграет, все, Данил, жди. Если не хочешь по-хорошему, все, меня не будет, я на работе. Вот и все.
In another part of the footage, Anastasia is overheard complaining to Sergei about Danil, about the boy being cold and asking what he could cover himself with. Other clips show her speaking scornfully about her son to acquaintances. Some of those comments suggest that she was already preparing an alibi, claiming the boy had lost his mind and was harming himself. After all these clips were posted online, public outrage erupted against Anastasia. While her husband was being questioned by investigators, she remained at home. Police officers stood guard outside her door. Authorities feared that residents of Chernyakovsk might try to take justice into their own hands. Sergei Gama was officially charged with 2 crimes. First, the murder of a minor. Second, deliberate physical injury to a child. The second charge referred to Danila's older sister, Irina. As you've probably guessed, her broken bone was not the result of a fall. Investigators found that on December 25, 2024, Sergei had beaten his stepdaughter. Apparently, 2 weeks later, the bruises had faded enough that no one at the hospital questioned the parents' story. Sergei was interrogated, then participated in a crime scene reenactment, and was sent for a medical examination. After that, a court hearing was scheduled to determine pre-trial detention. Meanwhile, Anastasia remained free, even as new evidence of her involvement continued to emerge. Sergei Gama's court hearing took place on February 5, 2025. The prosecutor requested that he be held in pretrial detention. Neither the defendant nor his lawyer objected. During a break, reporters managed to ask Gama a few questions. He said he regretted what had happened. He claimed he wasn't under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Allegedly, he didn't have any bad habits, and Danila's death was a surprise to him. He said he never imagined it could end this way. The Kaliningrad District Court ordered him to be held in custody until April 3rd. Both charges were merged into a single case. It is now being handled by the Regional Investigative Committee of Russia. As for the mother's actions, investigators classified them as concealment of a crime. The negligence of Child Protection Services and police also drew the attention of prosecutors and the public. As a result, criminal cases were opened on charges of negligence leading to death. 12-year-old Irina now lives with her maternal grandmother. The children's biological father interrupted his work at sea on February 5th and headed back to port. It's not yet clear who will gain custody of the girl. She has already spoken with investigators. It turned out that she did, in fact, witness both the beating of her brother and the hours he spent slowly dying from his injuries. Moreover, at school, Irina had approached teachers, told them about what was happening at home, and asked for help. On February 6, 2025, a day of mourning was declared in Chernyakovsk. A funeral service was held for Danil at the local church. Anastasia did not attend, but many volunteers came to say goodbye to the boy. Journalists who witnessed the service reported that Danil's face had been heavily covered with makeup, but even through the cosmetics, the brutal injuries were still visible. Bruises near his nose and above his left eyebrow, cuts and scars on his cheeks. On February 7th, news broke that Danila's mother had been formally arrested. She was charged with 3 crimes: child abuse, endangering the welfare of a minor, and neglect of parental duties. At her detention hearing, Anastasia Gamma, like her husband, expressed regret and gave only brief answers to the press. She claimed that Sergei had threatened her, and that he controlled not only the children but her as well. That, she said, is why she hadn't done anything for a year and a half. She was sent to a pretrial detention facility until April 3rd. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, she was in tears. She blamed everything on Sergei and denied taking part in the abuse.
The real questions aren't even about the stepfather anymore. They're about the mother. He wasn't even around during the entire search. She could have spoken up at any moment, said she was afraid, said he'd killed her son, but she never did. She even joked, "Wow, how funny. People think we're murderers." She was completely cold-blooded.
On February 9th, Danil Trekhlebov would have turned 8 years old. That day, a yellow bicycle appeared on his grave, the birthday gift he had dreamed of. It was left by 3 unknown women. There were also bottles of water placed nearby, because the last thing Danila had asked his mother for over the phone was a drink.